Hello! So, coming from a different angle today, which is going to be a bit of playing around. And today we're going to be doing leg circles on the wall, which is why I'm down here at this angle. Because it's really important to have a position where your legs can swoop along the wall. And from experience, when I've suggested for people to do wall exercises from whether it's your legs or your arms or whatever other body part, I've noticed a lot of people have a hard time finding a bare wall. That in our head we think, oh, of course I'm going to have wall space. But we don't for some reason. Maybe it's photos or it's furniture, whatever it is. So there's been a few places that I figured out over time that we actually do have spots. One is garages. I know that's where we keep cars, and of course you don't really want to lay down on it. Can be worthwhile depending on what your body's feeling like. Two is where your headboard is up against your bed to that wall. So our beds often have our head up against a wall and there's a headboard there. Depending on how thick your headboard is, often you can still do exercises using that wall space, unless you have a big photo or something. And of course it's a different situation, but that's often a good wall space that you can use, plus you get the bonus of laying in bed doing exercises. And then you have the third spot, which most of us will have, which is using a door. So say this is a door frame here. On either side of the door frame, you'll have a border and then usually some dead space. So it's not as smooth because, of course, you'll have that door frame, but it still is an option. You might just have to modify how large your movements are to work with it. And why I'm a huge advocate of wall work is because it gives us the opportunity to differentiate what's happening at our legs from what's happening on our spine. So when I teach in a studio, we use two main larger machines for this type of thing, and one is our Pilates reformer and the other is a Gyrotonics tower. So both of them are tall machines or big machines, heavy machines that have straps that your legs can come into. So then your legs are supported. Our legs are surprisingly heavy, and so if you try to just do leg circles up in the air, laying down on the ground, it's a huge amount of core work. And so you don't have as much opportunity to release through your hips because your hips and your core really have to be active to stabilize because of that huge pull of gravity of your legs down to the ground. So any sort of position that can help modify how powerful that pull of gravity is so that your legs can have range of motion without as much load, that's awesome. So that's why I like walls, is because other ways that people do this is using straps. So holding on, laying on the ground, hands holding onto a strap around your foot. Issue with that is that it requires a lot of shoulder stability in order to resist that. So then you don't get this complete relaxation of your body from your hips up, like laying on the ground. So I hope I convinced you. So without further ado, what we're going to do today are leg circles on the wall. And you're going to need, besides the space on a wall, are socks. So what I also figured out this week is so mind-blowing, is that I never figured out why it was very trendy for Instagram yogis to have knee-high socks. I just thought it was sort of one of those, sexual things where you wear tiny little clothes and knee-high socks. But I figured out is because it creates frictionless or low friction movement. So these are my brothers, and they're my favorite. I stole them from him ages ago. But these are great because they cover up to your knees, and so you get a lot of different types of opportunities when your whole shin is without friction or with minimal friction. But for today's purpose, we really just need little socks, which are my other favorite socks. They're my Eeyore socks. So, put those bad boys on. And then, other options is for neck support. You don't need a high one, so I like to use a ball if I'm doing a lot of stuff because it gives you deflated ball because it gives you that nice curvature for your neck, but it's too high when we're going to lift up into a bridge. So I will use a scarf instead as my little pillow. And then when we lay on down, this varies by your flexibility and your comfort. So the most important part when you lay down is that your back is flat and that when you put your feet up on the wall, your legs are straight. So if that means you are back here and that's where it is for your legs to be straight, that is fine. I tend to have a lot of mobility, not that that's a plus or a minus in life because it causes other issues. I can be here and that's quite comfortable with my bottom fairly close. I don't necessarily recommend having your bottom all the way there because it means you get also a few limitations. So just having your bottom close. And then from here, all you go for is a nice opening and closing to start with. Just figuring out how this works and how far you can open your legs and close your legs. We surprise ourselves often that when you open, you get past this 45 and then you get down here. This is where gravity is pulling at its strongest, so coming up is quite a bit of effort. Normally, I see people and we have less strong middle leg muscles, known as our adductors. So coming up can be a lot of work, and then we can overuse our back or unnecessarily be active in your stomach to do that, when this should be quite relaxed. So your head can be quite relaxed, your chest quite relaxed, shoulders quite relaxed, ribs quite relaxed, and belly quite relaxed. So that you're hanging out. And then the next little move that comes in is that you open up, get to your final point, bend your knees only as far as your hips allow without lifting your bottom. So if that means you just bend here, that's fine. If that's there, it's fine. If you're all the way in, that's fine. So then you bend, close it like a book. Straight up, open, bend, close. Up, open, bend, close. So this is about finding a pace that is pleasurable for you so that you can relax into it. If we're going at a pace that's too intense, often we notice it in our rib cage and our neck, so that either we're arching up or we're pressing or we're really tensing through here. If you're going a bit too slow, you might feel boring or overly challenging. So there's a window between where you feel the pleasantry of moving. Don't know if pleasantry is a word, but now it is. But not so much that you feel that full effort of moving. And then you get to a place where you can stop for a moment and just relax, maybe a little twist. And the next exercise that we go on from here, if you saw the post, it was when I lift on up into a bridge. So the thing with lifting up into a bridge is it takes a bit of work through your glutes and your core, especially when you have straight legs. So what we are going to start with is you straighten up only as far as you can keep your toes on the ground or on the wall. So once again, that can be really challenging. It requires a lot of opening space in the front of your shins. So you slide up to that point. Now your hands are on the ground, and you first lift up your tailbone, and then you lift up your belly button, then you lift up your diaphragm, and then you lift up your sternum, and down, sternum down, diaphragm down, belly button down, and tailbone down. Yeah. So tailbone up, belly button up, diaphragm up, sternum up. And then down, diaphragm, belly button, tailbone. Now we're going to add in the leg circle with this. So go for a smaller leg circle than what you normally would have done in that other exercise, so that you come up with your tailbone, up with your belly button, up with your diaphragm, up with your sternum, and then you open, bend in. As you start bending in, you roll back down so that you end up together in this closed position. So it's a sliding up, straightening up, opening, keeping that stable, rolling down as you close back in. Up and up, open and down. Up and up, open and down. Good. That's all we're really going to do now, but it's for you to play around with, which is the most fun part of all of this, is just letting yourself move completely free form. So yes, it's important to have sort of these coordinations of movements between what's happening at your hips, what's happening at your abdominals, what's happening in your spine, especially if you have hip pain and back pain. Sorry, I'll come back up instead of just playing around. And why that's important is because how our joints interact, regardless of if it's hip pain or if it's back pain, what the actual etiology is, the cause, the source, or the actual pathology and diagnosis of it, is that whatever it is, there's always going to be a biomechanical change. So a change between how your joints relate to each other. And so whenever I see people with back pain or hip pain, maybe it's pelvic pain, anything through here, there tends to have been a fluctuation in how your joints relate to each other. So maybe some joints take more of the load, some joints take less of the load. Maybe there's an imbalance between what's happening on your right hip and what's happening on your left hip, whether that's in strength or mobility. Maybe it's something along the lines that your back tends to take all the load and your hip does less. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe your hips do a lot and your back's really fixed. And so when we do movements that are specifically separating, and like this, where I'm laying flat and your hips, so your legs are the only thing moving while your spine is stable, it helps our mind to differentiate which regions are which. And once our mind learns how to differentiate what's what, then it helps to relearn the process of activating in a way that is pain-free. And something that I will always be preaching on about is that we have to remember that what promotes healing are different sets of principles than what are necessary for training. And so what I mean by that is that if we have an injury, if we're working to reestablish, maybe it's good health, maybe it's reestablish fundamentals, you follow different sets of rules than if you're really trying to push yourself and train. Training is more of an athletic type thing. Not that this isn't athletic, this is more of a holistic, feel-good type movement than training to do a marathon. And so when we do these types of movements, it's more important to understand when enough is enough, to practice with pleasure, so that you feel good, because when we feel good, our mind relaxes and absorbs what's actually happening and learns these processes. And then also, you really want to be paying attention So what is happening at each joint? What can you learn from doing this exercise? Maybe you learn that this region has less movement than that region in this type of motion. I don't know, there's so much you can take away. But I think I'll leave it there for today. And I know it was quite basic, but also a lot that I said. So if you have any questions, let me know. Also, if you have any requests or anything that you would like to do, let me know. And if you would like me to send you a message when I am going to be doing any live demos on specific exercises, let me know. I can do all of those. And last little bit, I almost forgot. Spine, low back pain. So lifting up into that bridge. The key point that I want anybody with back pain to take away is that more isn't better. It's definitely more important to lift up into a place where you don't have pain. That's a key. We don't want to be working into pain. So same thing with hip circles. If you're doing hip circles, you're getting a lot of grinding, a lot of discomfort, make them smaller. That's really the place that you want to be, is at a place where once again you move and it feels pleasant, it feels pleasurable. And I'll leave it there, because otherwise I'll go on another rant that might be who knows how long. All right, well, hope you enjoyed, and I hope that helps anybody. And I think that's it. Have a good day.